What's up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 11 of the Flying Knee KO podcast. My name is Victor Vasquez, and today we're going to be covering the fight night that just occurred this past Saturday that was headlined by Holly Holm against Irene Aldana, the bantamweights of the women's division in the UFC. It was a great night of fights overall. I mean, very surprising because considering that, especially from my experience of just watching some of the, MMA events that have occurred throughout my time watching it since like 2015. So it's not a lot, but, just from watching those fights, every time there's a UFC event right after a pay-per-view, such as Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, a lot of people end up tuning it out. Maybe they just enjoy those pay-per-view fight cards a lot more than the regular fight nights. But typically, those are the hidden gems that a lot of people don't really focus on because they could have hot prospects in the prelims or even some prospects in the main card that could just shoot out of nowhere and then boom, they just become a big hit in the UFC. So I had a good time watching these fights this past Saturday night. Again, I was very intrigued by what would happen in the main event between Holly Holm and Irene Aldana. Aldana, the Mexican fighter, trying to make a name for herself. She's, I believe, was in the top 5 in the bantamweight division, and a lot of people were seeing, can she bring in new blood for the bantamweight division? Is she the new challenge for Amanda Nunes, who is the champion of that division? But as we will see in this first segment, if she even had a chance against the former bantamweight champion in Holly Holm. So I just teased it right there, but let's go ahead and jump into the first segment, which I like to call...
I'm here with the winner, Derek Lewis. Derek, why'd you take your pants off? My balls was hot. I understand.
Hot Balls is the name of this segment, and I like to translate hot balls into hot news. So what was the hot topic that came out of this past weekend? So I just mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I want to again bring up the fact that Holly Holm was able to stop the new contender that was trying to rise up in this bantamweight division in Irene Aldana and just nullified all of her offense in last Saturday's fight night card that we just witnessed. It was an incredible performance for Holly Holm, and she just seemed a lot more motivated. She seemed coming off with a lot more energy. I mean, typically if you've seen any of her fights, she's always pacing back and forth, and she's even mentioned it. She has this nervousness when she's in the cage, but she tries to channel that energy and put it towards her performance and just, again, try to use that type of energy against her opponent. And it was just great to watch her being able to execute her game plan and just doing whatever she wanted in that cage against Aldana. One of the big key factors that you see if you had a chance to watch that fight last Saturday, Aldana just looked like she was always trying to get into a rhythm, get into position. And every time she felt like she was getting close enough to land something on Holly Holm, Holm just had an answer for her, whether it was side kicks, whether it was this crazy 4-punch combination with the blitz by Holly Holm. Everything that Aldana tried to do, it did not matter. Nothing really hurt Holly Holm. She came off with no scratches, no big injuries at all from that fight. It was a complete clinic by Holly Holm. And it's, again, she's in this position where she's already, I believe she's 36, 37 years of age. And Holly Holm has already mentioned in previous interviews, she does not want to stop and does not even think about retiring until she becomes champion again. She was already a former bantamweight champion. Everybody remembers Holly Holm with the very famous head kick knockout of Ronda Rousey. Well, it wasn't the head kick that she landed led to her ground and pound that knocked out Ronda Rousey. But I mean, again, that's the head kick heard around the world. Everybody knew who Holly Holm was at that exact moment. And again, it's one of those special knockouts that you will always remember of, okay, where was I when I saw that? So she's willing to go back, train even harder in order to face off against Amanda Nunes. And she's already faced Nunes once. She faced her last year in her only matchup, ended up getting rocked by a head kick from Amanda Nunes and just beaten down, ended up getting TKO'd. So now she's, again, climbing her way back. And what better way to do that than just, again, by eliminating a lot of these title contenders that are trying to come up that are barely getting their first shot. Irene Aldana, she's still very young, and what I was very happy about is that she got to face off against the top competition. It's very rare that some fighters get to face off against, Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm, especially when you're just, again, trying to make a name for yourself. And if you're really good, that top 5%, it's always the experience that's going to make your career count or make it even evolve. So although Aldana didn't come up on the, positive side last Saturday night, she has got to go back to her camp and say, you know what? Now I know what I need to evolve. Now I know what the bumps are in the road and what I need to do to get over them, because there's those two women that you're going to face in your career that are going to change the way you think about your game. And it's going to be either Holly Holm or Amanda Nunes in that bantamweight division. So props to Aldana. Again, she did her best to try to see how she can try to manage Holly Holm. Did not come out successful, but let's see what is in her future as her career goes on. As for Holly Holm, this is going to put her at number 2 in the bantamweight rankings. There's nowhere else to go. We're actually going to mention another fighter that also fought at this past Saturday's Fight Night card, and that was Jermain Derozan. She ended up getting another victory, which we will talk about, like I mentioned, a little bit later in a different segment. And now Holly Holm is at number 2, so she is not going anywhere. And like she mentioned even in the post-fight interview, she just feels like she's more motivated than ever. She knows that she has a clear shot. She knows that probably one fight away and one victory away from getting another title shot against Amanda Nunes, and she wants it to be Nunes. That way she can again test herself and see, okay, I faced Nunes once. I know that I can perform a lot better than I have before. So congratulations to Holly Holm. She was the big victor in this past UFC Fight Night. And it's just crazy to see, again, how Holly Holm was just able to erase any fear that she was going to get hurt, that she was going to get, taken to the ground and submitted or anything like that. That on Saturday night, Holly Holm was just clearly the number 1 fighter there, and she just had everything going for her. So hopefully we will get to see her in the very near future. Again, she did not come out with any injuries, so hopefully there is a fight booked for her in the coming months. All right, guys, that was the first segment where we talked about something that came out very hot from last Saturday's Fight Night. But now I want to talk about the best fight of that fight card, and my favorite one actually as well, in the segment that I like to call...
Let me bang, man. I want to do that, man. I do.
Let Me Bang Bros segment, which is a great statement from The Ultimate Fighter by Julian Lane. It's basically where I choose the best fight of the night. 2 guys or 2 ladies just throwing it down on the cage, or as a back and forth matchup. And there was one clear winner in last Saturday's fight card that was headlined by Holly Holm and Irene Aldana. And that was actually another bantamweight matchup in the women's division. And it was Jermain Derozan versus Juliana Pena. These 2 ladies, my goodness, went 3 rounds, but it did not go to a decision. It actually ended up a finish in favor of Jermain Derozan. So before we get to that finish, let's discuss what happened between both women. So first round started. You see the Iron Lady, Jermain Derozan, just with such skilled striking. She was a Muay Thai fighter before, and she's just so good with her hands, landing some nice overhand rights. The 1-2 combination for Jermain Derozan just works so beautifully against Juliana Pena. And you could see, because Derozan did have their reach advantage over Pena, it took Pena that first round to figure out, okay, where's the distance coming from? Like, how close can I get without getting hit directly in the face or even body shots as well? But that first round was clearly in favor of Jermain Derozan. Again, that lead jab going in right into the right straight was just working its magic on Juliana Pena. So then, after that first round came to a close, Juliana Pena and her, coaches in that corner started letting her know, okay, different types of adjustments that need to be made. She mentioned that they have to kind of, again, try to blitz in and avoid getting that damage in order to land some overhand rights. And as soon as that round started, Pena did exactly what her coaching staff wanted her to do. Kind of, again, rushing in, blitzing in, and landing a nice overhand right that seemed to have rocked and stunned Jermain Derozan a little bit. That put her against the cage, and then Pena started clinching up, trying to get the takedown, try to grind out that round against Jermain Derozan. And now that round started tipping more in favor for Juliana Pena. She again started landing some nice overhands right over the guard of Jermain Derozan. And as soon as the second round ended, you could see it, from certain judges' point of view. Certainly from mine, I felt like it was already 1-1 between Pena and Derozan. So, third round came basically down to the wire. Either woman had a chance to try to get this victory. And Pena, again, started off really well, finding her moments to blitz in, try to land those overhand rights, and just try to clinch up and take down Derozan to the ground. And then there was a moment against the cage. Pena had Derozan against it, trying to get that single leg or double leg takedown. And as soon as she put her head on the right side of Derozan saw the opening, lifted her hand, and ended up putting her hand right under the neck of Pena and synced in that guillotine choke. And it seemed like, okay, was Pena going to give up on that specific takedown? But she did not give up for that split second. And that just allowed Derozan to, again, sink in that choke even tighter. Then it immediately went to the canvas. And you could see Derozan just getting into proper position, try to get her legs around the body of Pena. And then all of a sudden, you could just see her pull up and just crank on the neck of Juliana Pena. And then the referee kind of waited a little bit, lifted up Pena's hand, and noticed that she was completely asleep. And that was going to do it. It was a guillotine choke in the third round between Juliana Pena and Jermain Derozan. And the Iron Lady comes up with the victory. Such a great match. If you guys have a chance to see it, please go check it out. Derozan, again, was working her magic with her hands. And that's why it caught everybody off guard that she actually ended up getting a guillotine choke, a submission, a very rare finish for her on the ground. But now she can add that to her resume. And my goodness, what a beautiful guillotine that she was able to get. And then in the post-fight interview with Dan Hardy, kind of asking the questions, it's like, hey, if any lady wants to give me her neck, be careful because I'm taking necks and I will choke you out. And so it was a great performance by both ladies. Got to give credit to Juliana Pena as well. But Jermain Derozan, the Iron Lady, comes out with the victory, and she secures her number 1 contender spot in that bantamweight division. All right, we just talked about my favorite fight of this past Saturday's fight night. Now I want to go into the fighter that I may not have been surprised by the performance. They did everything that I expected. And so that segment is actually called...
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Nate Diaz saying he is not surprised. And I'm going to say it, I was not surprised by Holly Holm's performance. That's right. Even though you see an up-and-comer like Irene Aldana and you see how dangerous her hands were in her previous fight, she ended up knocking out Ketlin Vieira in the bantamweight division with a sick right hand, dropped her completely. And you could see, okay, well, if Aldana is able to land a shot like that on Holly Holm, she gets it crisp right on the chin, it could be lights out for Holly Holm, which made it even more impressive that Holly Holm was able to nullify any offense that Aldana tried to set up. Now let's go ahead and break down how Holly Holm was able to nullify that offense of Aldana. First thing that you got to mention is just not letting her get any shots off because of the distance that Holly Holm kept Aldana. And how she kept that distance was throwing these side kicks, either to the knee or to the body of Aldana. Every time Aldana tried to get close, every time she tried to blitz in to throw a strike, you could see Holly Holm anticipate it, throw that side kick, hit the body of Aldana, and keeps her at bay. It was just working to perfection that any time Aldana, she knew that it was coming. She knew, okay, well, I'm probably going to get hit by this body kick, but I got to find a way to get into the pocket, get into range, and just did not work every time. Boom, body kick, boom, side kick, boom, side kick to the leg. And it's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful work by Holly Holm to, again, know what the game plan is and know she can't get close to me. I know she's dangerous, but I'm gonna be the one running the pace in this fight. So that was one of the aspects that worked in favor of Holly Holm. The next one that was working in her favor was her style of rushing in and the combinations she was throwing. She just wasn't throwing like a lead jab just to kind of set up her kicks. No, it was her blitzing in and then throwing 4-punch combination, whether it was through the guard of Aldana or maybe 1-2 at the top and then the next 2 to the body. Or maybe it was a nice little 1-2 and then a body kick and then a leg kick. It was just very different, combinations that Holly Holm was coming up with that were just confusing Aldana. Just didn't know what was coming up next. She knew that she was blitzing in and she was going to get hit by something. She just didn't know what was that strike that was actually going to be the one that's going to hurt her. Is it going to be the, punches at the top? Or is it going to be a calf kick? Or is it going to be a side kick pushing her off? So many different things that occurred. And then what made it even crazier is that Holly Holm was not really known for takedowns. She's more of a striker. Ended up getting a takedown in each round against Aldana. So she took her down multiple times. Got some nice ground and pound. Had a full mount in one of those rounds. But Aldana did a really good job to separate and get off of Holly Holm from being in top position. And so that's why I was not surprised by Holly Holm's performance. She just did everything she could in order to reclaim that top position in the bantamweight division. And again, hopefully get another title shot in the near future. We will be talking about what is next for her in her future in a later segment. But now I kind of want to segue into the fighter that I was surprised by. And the segment is actually called...
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that? No, damn well who I am. Who the fuck is that?
Who the F is that guy? Said famously by Conor McGregor. And like the title mentions, who the F is this guy or girl that we saw in last Saturday's UFC Fight Night? And that fighter that I want to choose is the Serbian middleweight Dusko Todorovic. Man, what a showing he had. This guy faced off against Daquan Townsend. And right from the get-go, you could see that this guy is just the real deal. This guy was just coming in, taking shots to the chin, absorbing all the damage that Townsend was throwing at him. Didn't even faze him at all. He was throwing these nice 1-2 combinations, throwing some overhand and right hooks that were landing flush on Townsend. Now, credit to Townsend, that first round, he took a lot of damage, but didn't seem stumbled, didn't seem like he was, hurt in any position. So then the second round came, and Todorovic did this exact same thing. He just found his opportunities, was not, worried of staying in the pocket with Townsend and exchanging some heavy punches. Instead, Todorovic just throwing nice little punches, and then he ended up getting a sweet takedown where he actually picked up Townsend, dropped him to the floor, and then he quickly, as soon as he hit the floor, changed to side control, trying to find a way to get to full mount, and he finally did, and just ended up throwing some nasty ground and pounds, some sick elbows, and it ended up forcing the referee to stop the fight. But a great performance through and through for Dusko Todorovic, the Serbian. He is undefeated, 10-0 currently in his MMA career, and this is the guy that I wanted to throw a spotlight on. Very tough considering that there was a lot of prospects in this fight card last Saturday, but I wanted to give a heads up and a shout out to Todorovic because he just put on a great performance, and he was the, basically the main card opener. And what better performance can you do but than getting a TKO victory and staying undefeated at 10-0? So that guy is Dusko Todorovic in the Who the F is That Guy segment. All right, guys, 4 segments down. We are here at the final segment. And this is where I get into my head and start thinking, all right, who of these main event winners, who do I want to see them fight next? Me personally. It might be ridiculous. I've probably gotten all of these predictions wrong in the past episodes, but I don't care. I just want to choose a fighter and see, okay, is it going to be an exciting matchup, or are they going to be able to move up the rankings? And this is just giving me the chance to be a booker for the UFC. It's never going to happen. Never going to have that job. But still, it's always fun to fantasize what matchups could be next for these fighters. And this segment is actually called...
Whole of the ball game and they get hit by me. So I said I'd knock him out in the 4th round, and I knocked him out in the 4th round. You can call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Mystic Mac is the name of this final segment. So I'm going to pretend like I'm the Mystic Mac, and I'm going to try to, again, determine who is next for the main card winners of this past Saturday's UFC Fight Night. Again, it was headlined by Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. So let's start off with the man I just mentioned in the fourth segment right now, the Who the F is That Guy winner. And that was actually Dusko Todorovic. He ended up getting a victory over Daquan Townsend. Again, like I mentioned, got that nice TKO victory after going into full mount and just landing some nasty ground and pound. So, little background on Todorovic. He's still outside of the top 15 of the middleweight division, so he's going to have to get a couple more victories. I'd say probably like 2, 3, maybe have some really great performances in those. If he can continue getting those TKOs, he can hopefully get a ranked opponent. But I wouldn't mind seeing him climb that ladder and face off against the likes of Andre Munoz or Rodolfo Vieira, who are, again, other names that are trying to, get the spotlight as well in the middleweight division. So, be very interesting to see. All those guys that I mentioned, Andre Munoz and Rodolfo Vieira, also have victories and are on a few winning streaks as well in the middleweight division. So, it'd be very interesting to see what Todorovic can do against those guys as well. All right, next fighter up is Kyler Phillips, the bantamweight. He is nicknamed the Matrix, and he put on a show against Cameron Elsey, who was trying to make his UFC debut. He was excited. He was, again, on short notice, came in to try to save the day to face off against Kyler Phillips, hoping to have a great moment, a magical moment for his UFC debut. Instead, he's given the L by Kyler Phillips in TKO fashion because, again, Kyler Phillips just went into the Matrix, showed off his slick striking, ended up getting TKO'd via ground and pound. Great job by Kyler Phillips. He came out strong. As soon as the match started, that first round, throwing some immediate leg kicks to the calf, to the outside knee as well, trying to hurt the lead leg of Cameron Else. And it worked to perfection because, again, every time Else tried to get close, leg kick, then a couple body kicks. There was even a time where Kyler Phillips tried to throw a flying knee, in light of the name of this podcast. I would have loved it if it would have been a knockout of a flying knee, but didn't happen. But again, Kyler Phillips was just showing off his ability and his striking and the confidence that he has in his ability. Then we get into the second round where we actually get Kyler Phillips again trying to find the perfect position in order to try to get this finished victory over Cameron Elsey. He actually ended up getting him on the ground, and then once he had top position, there was nowhere Cameron Elsey could go. Ground and pound again against some nasty elbows trying to cut up the face of Cameron Else, and it forced the referee to once again call off the fight. So we got back-to-back finishes via ground and pound, first from Todorovic and now from Kyler Phillips. So now another great hot prospect coming out from the bantamweight division who deserves a spotlight as well. So similar situation that he is in compared to Todorovic that I just mentioned. Also very much away from the top 15 of the bantamweight division, but he's going to have to try to prove himself. And with that slick striking, should be very interesting to see who they can give him as a next matchup. I wouldn't mind seeing him against Davy Grant or Kyung Ho Kang. Both of them are coming off of victories in their last matchups. Both guys have also gotten some TKO victories as well. So best thing to do is put these hot prospects into exciting matchups to get more recognition. So that's who I'd want to see Kyler Phillips face off against, either Kyung Ho Kang or Davy Grant in the bantamweight division. All right, now we're going to move on to Jermain Derozan. I mentioned her in the Let Me Bang Bros segment. She had the best fight of the night, which also got to give credit to Juliana Pena. Now we're going to see what is next for Derozan. I mentioned it before. She is the number one contender. She retained that position after getting that nice guillotine choke on Juliana Pena. So now we got to determine what's next. There's no question that she deserves to get another title shot. Even though she just fought Amanda Nunes last December, you could just question, all right, well, maybe she needs one more. Maybe she just needs to, stay away from, Amanda Nunes for a little bit, get some new blood going. But, I mean, when you get a great performance against Juliana Pena with a guillotine choke, you get those finishes, you can't deny her that title shot. The one issue that is coming up is Amanda Nunes already is booked for a fight this December 2020. She's actually going to be facing off against Megan Anderson for the 145-pound title, the featherweight division, getting some love. So she's probably going to be busy from then till December, and then depending on what happens after that matchup, could be 2 to 3 more months. So she might not be able to fight until March, April, or May of 2021. So I feel like de Randamie might not want to wait. She might want to face off against another challenger. Why not face off against Holly Holm? That's right, the main event winner against Jermain Derozan. That'll be the second time they face in their careers. Jermain Derozan actually got a victory over Holly Holm in 2017. So it would be very interesting to see how these two ladies would match up now that it's been 3 years since they last faced off. Both of their games have evolved. Both of them have lost to Amanda Nunes. So a lot of stakes in that matchup. Again, it would be for sure has to be a main event. And it's going to be for the number 1 contender match. I'm all in for that. Let's see that fight up in the near future. And let's hope that the UFC can at least put that one as they wait for Amanda Nunes to face off against Megan Anderson. Alright, we're moving on to the co-main event winner. It was actually Carlos Felipe in the heavyweight division. He put on a great and technical performance versus Yorgan De Castro. Both of these guys, even though they were still heavyweights, you're always thinking, okay, these guys are just throwing and banging it out in the cage. No, they actually fought very technical. They throw in some heavy stuff and some crazy exchanges, but Felipe was just a much quicker fighter. He's utilized his jab to perfection, and that jab was just setting up for the rest of his strikes, whether it was some nice body kicks to the torso of Yorgan De Castro, or it was a nice little overhand rights that was stunning De Castro a few times. Like I mentioned, he was throwing some great body kicks, some great calf kicks as well, and it just threw off the rhythm of De Castro. He just couldn't find a way to block those shots and get away from them as well. All in all, ended up going in favor of Carlos Felipe, who got the unanimous decision. And like I mentioned, another great prospect that is still a few ways away from facing a ranked opponent. So let's continue to give them some challengers that are also on some streaks. So why not give Felipe, who has a 9-1 record, go up against Chase Sherman or Alexander Romanov. Both of those guys are currently on 3-fight win streaks, and both of them could challenge him on the feet with striking and on the ground with submission. So we'd love to see those guys face off against Carlos Felipe in order to see who's going to rise up and go towards that top 15 heavyweight ranking. All right, and the last fighter of the night, I spoiled it already. It is Holly Holm. What better thing can you say for the preacher's daughter than she is going to be fighting for either a title or against none other than Jermain Derozan. I want to see that fight. It's going to be the second time. It's a rematch. They last fought in UFC 208 in 2017, 3 years ago. Very controversial. If you guys don't remember that matchup, ended up being very controversial because Jermain Derozan at the end of the first and the second round, I believe, ended up landing some strikes that stumbled Holly Holm, and it landed after the bell rang. So, very, very controversial. A lot of people felt like she should have been deducted some points. She was not deducted at all for those strikes that were landed not once, but twice. And so she ended up getting that victory against Holly Holm. So I'm pretty sure Holmes is down to try to get that loss right back. And then, Jermain Derozan wants to stay fresh. She wants another tough challenge. And what tougher challenge is there than the lethal striker in Holly Holm? So I'm all in, guys. I want to see that matchup. Again, I love it when there's a matchup that has stakes. And there's nothing better. Both ladies are going to be fighting for the number 1 contender to fight Amanda Nunes again. Whoever wins gets a title shot. Whoever loses is going to have to go back to the drawing board, fight a few more new contenders in order to climb their way back. So I'm all in for that matchup as well. All right, guys. Well, that is it for episode 11 of the Flying Knee KO podcast. It was great to cover these specific fighters and prospects. So if you guys are free this Saturday coming up, we're going to have another great fight night card that is going to be headlined by Marlon Moraes and Corey Sandhagen. Both guys, again, very similar to Holm versus Aldana. Whoever gets this victory gets that much closer to being a number 1 contender for the bantamweight title that is currently held by Piotr Jan. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Corey Sandhagen comes out after getting his first loss against Aljamain Sterling. And for Moraes, again, he's just looking to find his way to get another title shot. He got a victory over Jose Aldo, but Aldo ended up getting the actual title shot over him. So now we'll see what Moraes can do. He's still a very lethal striker, and he's trying to overcome those those mishaps that happened when he faced off against Henry Cejudo last year for the bantamweight title. But we will see what happens this Saturday between Sandhagen and Moraes. It should be an exciting matchup, guys. So if you have a chance, go check that out. But again, guys, thank you so much for listening. This is Victor Vasquez coming at you with the Flying Knee KO podcast. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me or even post your comments in the YouTube comment section here below. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you guys next week for episode 12.